What is this?
One day, while I was preparing dinner as usual, suddenly, my daughter made a noise I couldn't understand.
Mom, oh no.
I turned off the pot and went to the dining table where my daughter was sitting.
What the hell is this?
To my surprise, there was a wiretap. Who did it? And for what purpose? I live with my husband, Oscar, and my Lynn.
Mom, come on. Hurry up.
Okay, wait a second.
My daughter is 10 years old, Element. Schooler. She's into swimming and never misses lessons every week. I'm so happy to see her growing up into a cheerful girl. My daughter, my husband, and I get along very well, and we all live together. But we are not completely free from, not because of any one of us, but be my husband's mother. Mean my mother-in-law. My in-laws live about a 15-minute walk from our house. My mother-in-law is uncomfortable with my son being by her side. When we first got married, she once said that we should move in together. She was extremely insistent, but I spend with just the three of us. So I firmly refused to move in with, and my husband had had enough of my mother's over-interference. He told his mother that he couldn't hear her. But my mother-in-law didn't give up and insisted on moving in with us 6 times. In the end, I convinced my mother to move into a place within walking distance of my mother-in-law's house. My mother-in-law still wasn't convinced that my father-in-law had gotten her on board. For the time being, the living arrangement was settled. The 3 of us were able to keep our lives together. However, my mother-in-law still presses on a regular basis. We always had to go to my mother-in-law's house during the holiday season because it was so close to our house. Even though my husband and I kept our distance from her and didn't want to get involved, she still managed to manipulate us into doing what she wanted. My mother-in-law used her neighbor's pressure on us.
Why didn't you take care of your mother? Your wife is not good, your mother. She went through a lot of pain to get to you, and if you avoid her, she'll be hurt. Besides, you're the eldest son. It's your duty to take care of your parents.
That's how we were attacked by our... We end up having to go to my in-laws' house every time. I wish my mother-in-law was as nice to me as she is to her son, but she loves him so much and sees me as the enemy. That's why she always picks on me, but I don't see her.
Gwen, you're feeding Oscar such bad. I can't believe it. I feel sorry for... I wish I could cook for him every day.
My mother-in-law says such terrible things about me.
Mom, what a thing to say. Stop it.
My husband defends me every time, but my mother-in-law is persistent nuisance.
How can it be that you've been married 2 years and still haven't had a baby? Gwen, I think you might be infertile.
I was just astonished when my mother-in-law said something like that to me. Even my husband's eyes widened in amazement.
Mom, knock it off. Enough. We're not in a big hurry yet. Besides, a child is a gift. Don't assume that Gwen is infertile. Your feelings. Why is it Gwen's fault? It's also possible that I'm infertile.
When my husband said that, my father-in-law joined him in defending me.
Oscar's right. We don't know who caused it or anything else about it. You can't decide when to be blessed, baby. Don't look down on Gwen just because she had a baby early.
My mother-in-law finally calmed down my husband, and my father-in-law got to her. But even then, when things had cooled off, she would start to bully me again. I was pretty much overwhelmed by the repetition. Then my daughter was born. My father-in-law was very happy about the birth of his granddaughter. I thought that my mother-in-law would be down a little now that she had a grandchild, but she was just as demanding as ever. But she reacted differently than I.
What? It's not a boy. Are you kidding me? It's your duty to give birth to a BC. You married the eldest son.
You've been picking on me, asking for a grandchild for all these times. But when a child is born, she complains that it's not a boy. What kind of nerve does this person? My husband and father-in-law were both dismayed at how far she had come. In the end, it just doesn't matter about me. Then, when my daughter grew up, my mother-in-law hardly loved her at all. My daughter also felt as a child that she was not well liked by her grandmother. Therefore, she was only attached to her grandfather. Seeing my daughter like that made my mother-in-law angry, and she began to treat me badly.
Despite being Oscar's daughter, she has a good character. I wonder if she only inherited Gwen genes. Or maybe you are not Oscar's child with...
That's enough. I snapped at my mother for saying that.
Please don't make such accusations. She is Oscar's and mine. What kind of nerve do you have to...
Oh, you're upset like that? Because you're lying, right? You slut.
Stop it! You've gone too far. I'm
My father-in-law had just gone shopping. My husband was in the other room on the phone. I got my daughter ready to leave, 6th door, and put on her shoes. When my husband noticed we were leaving, he was surprised and came to the door.
What's happening? What's wrong, guys?
I'm sick and tired of your mother's attitude.
What? Did Mom say something again?
She started asking if Lynn is really...
What? She said what? Seriously?
My husband's face turned red, and he went to my mother-in-law.
Mom, are you serious? How could you think that?
When my husband yelled at her, she seemed offended.
I just said what I thought. Oscar and Lynn don't look alike.
You're kidding me. We're leaving. We'll never come here again.
My husband got his stuff and put on his shoes. And we left my in-laws and went home. That was ugly. How insane is she? Does she know any? My daughter is just entering her senior year. It's terrible that my mother-in-law says such disgusting things to plant negative thoughts in her head. After we got home, my husband received a call from his father-in-law asking why we had left. When my husband explained the situation, his father was appalled. He said he would give me a stern talking to. But to my surprise, no matter how much my husband and father-in-law tried, my mother-in-law never gave up on bullying me. I'm sure she will continue to annoy daughter in every way she can. Then my husband said to me,
Let's not go to my parents anymore, because every time we go there, you of it, right?
But then again, your mother will get into trouble with the neighbors, and they'll keep telling us to be G-hair.
Then ignore them. The neighbors are just strangers, yo.
Yeah, that's true.
I was reassured when my husband said, Don't worry about it. It's just a little thing. My mother-in-law is very good at telling stories to the neighbors. But just like my husband said, we just have to ignore them. We used to feel like we were doing something wrong every time a neighbor borrowed something from us. But now I don't care what the outside says. We are united as a family. After that, we stopped visiting our in-laws' house. My mother-in-law had contacted my husband asking him why he didn't come. I don't know how she could contact that in the first place. Do you not understand that you are of this? Do you just want to see your son, even if you know you're doing the best possible thing? Well, either way, we won't be going to our in-laws' house again. We won't even let my mother-in-law in our place. Sure enough, when we lived next door to our neighbors, they began meddling in our affairs and causing all sorts of problems. But I didn't pay any attention to them anymore.
Thank you for your concern.
I thank them politely and act like I don't know what they are talking about. Thanks to this, I was able to live very peacefully for a while. My daughter doesn't have to see her grandmother anymore, and she seems happy every day. I wish we had dissociated ourselves from our mother-in-law earlier. By the way, my father-in-law does no wrong. Sometimes we go out for dinner with him without my mother-in-law's knowledge. My daughter misses her grandfather having dinner with him. We were spending happy days like that. But then something unexpected happened.
Huh? What is this?
One day, I was preparing dinner in the kitchen as usual. Suddenly, my daughter made a startling discovery. I was wondering what she was doing in the middle of cooking and couldn't take my hands off it. I decided to ask her later.
Well, I can't get it off.
My daughter was still saying something, and suddenly she started to sound like a sassy ass.
Mommy, what's this?
Whoa, what's going on, honey?
Come see this. Hurry.
I'm putting the pot on the fire.
Just come, please.
Oh my gosh, what's up with you?
I turned off the fire and went to the table.
What the hell is this?
To my surprise, there was a wiretap. Who did this? And for what purpose?
Mom. Oh no.
I quickly covered my daughter's mouth, typed a text on my phone. Don't say anything. We don't know, be listening. She nodded silently. There might be other wiretaps in the... I went outside and called the police. And when the police checked the house, I learned a startling fact. One is under the dining room table, and another one is in my husband's bedroom, and one was in my daughter's room. We were horrified. We didn't know how long it had been, but someone had been listening to our conversations at home. According to the police, the location devices suggested that it was an amateur job. They said that now that all the wire had been removed, a person might come on us. The police told us to be very careful. They also told us that they would zone patrols in the neighborhood. My husband had just gone on a business trip that day and would not be back. But once we found the bug, it was not long before my daughter and I were left alone in the house. So my daughter and I decided to stay parents' house until my husband came from his business trip. I don't want to send a message or call my husband, who is at work on business. Tell him that the house was bugged. It might make him anxious, and he may not be able to concentrate on his work. I decided to report it to my husband came home. My parents were extremely worried when they heard that the house had been bugged, and they were angry that anyone who such a lousy thing should be caught as possible. My daughter is also very upset and...
Mommy, I forgot my stuffed bunny.
Oh, you did.
She nodded her head as though she were all cried out. She always sleeps with a big stuffer as a pillow. In her current frightened state, she would never be able to sleep without that animal. Then my father said we should go in for her.
Then I'll go with you. Thanks, Dad.
And my father and I went to the house together. There might be a person in doubt war around. So my father and I cautiously entered the house and took the stuffed animal from our daughter's room. Then suddenly we heard the front door. My father and I were startled, but CC mouths with our hands to keep from sound. We heard someone walking down the hall. My heart was racing, and I thought I might lose it. My father stared at the entrance to my daughter's room, protecting me. The footsteps passed through her room, disappear into the living room. Perhaps the person's coming to retrieve a listening device from the dining room. My father and T looked at each other, quickly preparing to flee. The person who is looking for the bug needs to leave while they still can. My father quietly opens the door to the dining room.
What? Oh my God.
My father sounded surprised. I whispered angrily at him to speak normally.
Hey, Dad, don't make a sound.
He turned to me and said,
It's Oscar.
I was so surprised that I opened the look toward the living room. And there was my husband checking your dining table. I didn't understand what was going on. Why was my husband at home when he's supposed to be on a business trip? and he's checking the place where he found it.
What are you doing?
When I talked to him, he started shaking.
Gwen, what are you doing here?
That's my question. I thought you were on a business trip.
What's going on here, Oscar?
Oh no, it's just that.
My husband was getting upset when we questioned him. Then the front door opened, and we heard a high-pitched, shrill voice.
Oscar, did you recover the listening?
The voice was my mother-in-law. It was only after my husband alerted her to our presence that she recognized us.
Gwen? Why?
I gradually began to understand that.
Oscar, you did this with your mother? What in the world do you mean by bug house?
When I said this, my husband seemed in and began to tell me everything.
Because you're having an affair, R. That's what the neighbors said. They'd seen you walking around with guys. Some said they saw you and Lynn going to a restaurant together.
I had no idea about any of this.
That's how I got reports of infidel various people one after another. So I started to think you were being unfaithful. Also, Mom said Lynn and I aren't allowed to go out tonight. So I talked to my mom about it. She told me to bug the house and get the affair. So I did it, and the day I said I was on a business trip, the wiretap stopped transmitting. I thought something might be up with. I rushed over to retrieve it.
I got a hard blow to the head, like it was knocked up, and I almost fell over.
Unbelievable.
But if you were constantly being told something, you would believe it, wouldn't you?
Don't be ridiculous. Would you really do such a thing? Are you saying that Lynn and I have deceiving you? If you can't trust us, why don't you hire a private detective to investigate? And if you doubt that your daughter is yours, why don't you do a DNA test or something?
When I yelled at him, he finally realized his mistake.
Oh no, sorry. I was wrong. I did a terrible thing to you too.
It's too late to apologize. I can't do this anymore. Let's get...
No, Gwen, please. I was wrong. We're family, right? Let's live together as a family again.
That's enough. I'm so disappointed. I can't stay married to someone who believes rumors like that.
When I said that, my mother-in-law interrupted me.
Oscar, aren't you glad you got rid, woman? I'm sure she's having an affair, even if she's hiding it. You should get rid of this woman and daughter once and for all and find new.
My mother-in-law attacks me even in a situation like this. Then my father stood in front of her.
I wonder, why did the neighbors have like that? Did someone make them say it? What think?
My father stared at my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law flinched at my mom's comment.
Why should I know?
Then my father continued. He seemed to be sickened that my mother-in-law was acting like she didn't know anything about it.
I'm sure this kind of thing can be a libel lawsuit, right? My daughter can sue the neighbors. That's right, Gwen. Because of the nasty rumors, you and Oscar had to break up. Okay, shall we immediately go around the neighbors that we're going to sue now?
When my father said that, my mother-in-law instantly started panicking.
That's a bit too much, don't you think? I'm sure the neighbors were joking.
Well, if it was a joke, it's even what. They need to be brought to justice for it.
What? Why? You can't do that.
Why not? My daughter is being accused of being unfaithful, of making up facts that never happened. People who twist facts like that should be punished. Gwen, let's go.
My father said so. I nodded, put on my shoes, and went outside. Then my mother-in-law started to cry with tears in her eyes.
It's me. I told our neighbors false information.
Mother-in-law suddenly gets down on her knees.
Is it true?
I took off my shoes and went back into the hallway to ask my mother-in-law.
Yes, I thought that if Oscar were to divorce his wife because of an affair, he would return home.
When my mother-in-law said that, my eyes widened and he got angry.
Mom, what are you doing? Don't you feel ashamed of doing this? Get out of our sight already. Don't your face again?
My husband snapped and said so, but I looked him in the eye and said no.
Can you correct my sentence? Lynn and I have nothing to do with you anymore.
What are you talking about? You know I had nothing to do with one all moment.
No, you're the one who bugged the hawk. I don't trust you anymore. Swear to God, I'm going to divorce you.
I said that and left the house with my father. My husband and mother-in-law were both slumped on the floor, their faces pale. I then went to my lawyer and asked divorce. Then I offered a deal to our neighbors in exchange for not suing them for defamation. I asked them to give me detailed information about what my mother-in-law had them to do. The neighbors all confessed that my mother-in-law had instructed them to do so. And with that, it was accepted as fact that my husband had bugged the house. Therefore, I am now entitled to alimony as well as child support. My mother-in-law told me that my father-in-law gave her a divorce and kicked her out of the house. She tried to cling to her son, but there was no way he would forgive her for causing the divorce in the first place. My ex-mother-in-law was cut off from her ex-husband. Rumor has it that my ex-mother-in-law is living alone in her apartment and working part-time to make ends meet. I, on the other hand, got a new job and started working full-time. Now I live at home with my parents, and they expect me to take care of my daughter. She seems to have gotten over her fate. She is now putting a lot of effort swimming, which she has been doing time. I will continue to work hard and take care of my daughter as my foremost priority.